Something that's been brought up a lot recently in regards to what is going on with the old Marvel TV division and the future of some of those characters in the MCU proper has been the Punisher. How does Marvel Studios deal with this, and do they in fact have a Punisher problem? So when I say the Punisher problem, I think most of you automatically know what I am talking about, and that's the use of the skull, how synonymous it's become with pretty much everything that has to do nothing with the Punisher, and the people using that logo and trying to say it represents literally the opposite of what the Punisher stands for. I mean, ignorance is bliss, I suppose, but then again, the Punisher runs into a problem right then and there. And with Disney trying to focus so much on making the Punisher something that's a little bit more, not really mainstream in terms of comics anymore, because, let's be real, the Punisher is not as prominent as he once was. This brings up the big question. Is Disney trying to bury the Punisher, rebuild the Punisher from the ground up, or completely just outright ignore the character altogether? And I think the Punisher lies in an interesting position where everything at once is fighting against him. And I don't think this is the fault of the character. I don't think it's the fault of the Marvel Netflix show or anything like that. I think it's the fault of, again, ignorance and people and how they perceive him and what they do with him. And Disney is backed up into a wall with this one. They know that the Punisher is one of the most recognizable and sellable characters in Marvel Comics. Ever since I can remember, I've always seen that skull on something, the Punisher on something. Merchandise, hats, t-shirts, they always sell. People know what it is. But again, Disney sees this, but they can't utilize it because, again, misdirection, mistreatment, and people believing that they might be supporting something that they're not. And this, again, has to do with the problem with the Punisher and how he's been presented to the mass media, and also the people that don't know anything about the Punisher thinking that the character is one thing and not the other. What he actually is. And this is where I think lies the interesting turn for the Punisher, because we've seen Marvel Comics try to pivot the character away from just being who he was and how he was presented to something different, something with a little bit more depth and substance. And Marvel TV, for all their faults, they actually tried really hard to take the Punisher away from Frank Crazy, and that's it, to a guy that's more complex, with a story of who he is, how he was mistreated, and what happens. And in turn, they gave the Punisher the most depth that he's ever had. Some people ended up not liking this because they're purists of such a one-note character that Frank Castle used to be, and try to say that he's only been the Punisher Max version, only I think having read a certain amount of Max and not anything outside of it. And again, the Max imprint, while great, within itself brings up a lot of problems, because that's not still the Punisher as he's always been. That was a small fraction of his entire existence. There's more to him, which is why I think I've seen the whole notion of they're pivoting away to try to make him more like some other characters. And I think in reality, no matter what they do with him, they can't deny that the character is always going to be synonymous with that skull. So yeah, I think I'm going to agree with everybody. They have a big Punisher problem. And the way to take care of this problem is to use the character. If you just sit on him and say, well, he doesn't exist, we're not going to push him, that just makes the whole situation worse. Why not use the Punisher to explain to people, with your current most popular franchise in the world, of who he actually is with more eyes on it? I mean, it's all there. So use that. Put him in the War Machine armor if you want, but you should do it, because the character's not going to go away. And the merchandise certainly isn't going away, because I guarantee you can still find it everywhere, and Disney's licensing it out. But they don't want to then license him where it counts most. Seems a little fishy and questionable to me at best as a business company that's looking to make profits.